If I'm talking to somebody who's really struggling, maybe they've lost a whole bunch of money, maybe they don't know what's going to happen, maybe they wanted to retire next year and now they really don't think they can, I'm going to have a different conversation with that person based on where they are. But my job is to leave people better than I found them.
Welcome to Tapping In. I'm your host, Marisa Grieco, and today's guest is Dominique Pacheco. Now, this woman is extraordinary. She has absolutely done it all. She's worked in Silicon Valley with Steve Jobs. I was very impressed by that, by the way. I was like, what? She's also done production work, which another list that is incredible. But what we're going to be talking about today is how she helps us financially. Helping us to find our center, helping us to find that abundance that's within us all. And I can't wait to jump into this topic because she is a wealth of knowledge and you guys are going to absolutely adore her. Welcome, Dominique.
Thank you, Marisa. It's great to be here.
So I kind of want to just jump into what we were talking about. The cameras were off, where you were discussing about how what started the whole thing about helping people financially, getting them hooked up in these programs. And
I think one of the most interesting things about life is something actually that Steve Jobs said at his commencement speech to Stanford years ago. He said that you can only connect the dots looking back. And we were talking earlier and I said, could you imagine yourself as a little girl being here today doing what you're doing? And I could never have imagined that. I could never have imagined that I would be talking to people about money. I would be talking to people about how money works. I would be a financial educator. But when I look back and I do connect the dots, I see that I was involved in conversations that weren't, I'll say, culturally normalized. Mm-hmm. So talking to a CEO about an art program in high tech didn't really make a lot of sense.
Right.
Culturally, it wasn't like a normalized conversation. Hey, what do you think about de Kooning? I mean, right. These were not conversations that we're accustomed to having. But I think that as a precursor to having more difficult conversations with people and conversations that make people reach into places they're not necessarily going, that was one of my preparations for what I'm doing now.
So what happened also to you in your past that kind of activated the whole importance of learning how to handle yourself financially? Right.
I think as a lot of people, here's where I am now with it, which is that I talk to people every single day who I would not be talking to otherwise. And mainly because of Zoom, because my business is a national agency at this point. I talk to people every single day I've never met before. And I'm talking to them about really intimate things. And I think that money is one of the most intimate conversations that you can have with yourself. I definitely was not somebody who was brought up understanding how money works. I was around people I've been in my life around billionaires and very, very wealthy people, but I would never ask them, hey, how does that work?
Right. It's so taboo. How did you make all this money?
And also too, you and I might go really deeply into emotional things when we first meet each other and have mom conversations and things that aren't necessarily conversations to be had on the street. But for me to go, hey, Marisa, how much money did you make last year? And what did you do with your money? And do you invest it? Are you a spender? Are you a saver? That's not a normalized conversation.
And I also feel defensive. And I also feel like my self-worth is tied to that. So if I tell you oh, I did amazing, there's a part of me that's like, oh, you jealous now? Or is there something I'm going to make you feel uncomfortable? It's like this
I love that you actually have some revelatory things in there. So as I'm speaking to somebody, I have to say, they're not normally going to say, go where you just went.
Okay.
But they may be feeling that.
Right.
And so I think what's going on for people is we walk around with so many unconscious thoughts.
Yes.
In fact, I think they say that 90% of our thoughts are unconscious, which is a pretty amazing thing to think about.
Right.
But when you start to observe your thinking,
Right.
you understand your behavior. And a lot of our behavior around money is so unconscious. And unfortunately, our culture isn't a culture of abundance and everybody can be wealthy and that there's enough to go around. Our culture is the 1%. I mean, we even have like the 99% versus the 1% in our minds, in our unconscious. So that means that I don't have access to that if that's what I'm telling myself.
Right.
So the first step in my process was actually not necessarily observing what I didn't know, but thinking I knew it all. Mm-hmm. Which is the first step to failure, I think, because coming with the beginner's mind to life is really what keeps you moving through life in a dynamic way, as opposed to, growing versus dying. So when I first came into this business, I was not looking at it like I had things I needed to handle. I was thinking like, oh, I've got this handled. And what I realized is I didn't, and that I had a lot to learn. So my first step was humbling myself to learning and being open to changing my mind.
So what's the first step then? Do I start to make a list of my programming? Like, what do I believe around money? And then list kind of all of that out. And then is there something on the other side that you have?
I love your question. And that was one of the things that you and I kind of connected with when we first started talking, which is everything is mindset. Everything is how we think. And as I said, the things we don't know that we're thinking. So for me, the first step to changing anything is actually observing it. How is it right now? And that's a huge part of what I do for people is I help them observe their current situation. The next step, where do I want to go? And then reverse engineering back from the future self to the now self and assessing your behaviors and seeing if you continue your path along the way you're going now, will you get where you say you want to go?
Yeah.
And if not, then we need to disrupt that, make some changes and help you get there.
Now, so is it a combination of, so now I have a positive mindset. I'm like, you know what? I'm ready for the abundance. I'm open to receiving. Now, how do I do the real third dimensional part where it's like, do you go into investing? Do I lay out because I'm still like, yeah, I want to be rich. I accept the money. Woo.
Right.
Especially if I'm coming from a place of, I don't like my job. I'm stressed because I have bills to pay. Like there's the reality of life too, where I'm just like, I don't have time. Like there's almost like I don't have time to do that because I'm struggling. I'm just making time for this one bill. I don't have time to invest because again, I'm not part of that 1%. I'm lucky if I just have food on the table. Or
I think that where you and I are very similar is in that we understand that everything is energy. And so where you put your attention, your energy flows, right? So most people are employees. They go to a job. If they're fortunate, they get paid.
right.
They might have some benefits. They might get vacation. They might get a 401k. Their employer might, add to that. That's how we've been indoctrinated. You go to school. The first financial decision most young people make is to go into debt. They go and get a student loan. And then they go to a good school. This is the prevailing wind, right? You go to a good school, you get an education, you get out of school, you get a job, and then you immediately go into, okay, I now have to pay back my loan. Then I'm going to get into the cultural norm of, maybe I'm going to get married. Maybe I'm going to buy a house, have children. And there's a lot of just the energy of pushing you forward in that way. I think the Gen Z is very different. I think that they've really observed the way that their parents have lived and are living. 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Mm-hmm. 80% of Americans hate their job. Those statistics to a young person If I was looking at that as a 20-year-old, as a 25-year-old, I'd be looking at that saying something's not working. And that's basically where we start. What's working? What isn't? What can you change? And what can you actually move forward with? It's
I know I'm still
it's a big picture, and there's a lot of moving parts to it. That's why understanding where I am right now is extremely important. Where am I? What are my short, mid, and long-term savings goals, and what is saving reality for me? Do I have an emergency fund? Do I have things that I'm putting money into that will grow over time? Do I have something put away for the future? And am I actively looking at what I want that to be? What do I want my life to look like in 5, 10, 15, 20 years? When do I want to... It's funny, the word retirement, right? Like when we were kids, retirement meant maybe you get a gold watch and you sit on the porch rocking. Yeah. But retirement isn't an age, it's an event. It's actually being financially independent so that you no longer have to work for money and you can actually draw down passively from the money that you put away.
Right.
Or you've actually set up passive income and you'll be paid for the rest of your life through that. But we're not thinking like that. We're at this point, a lot of people don't have retirement.
Have you ever noticed any energetic blocks that stop people from receiving money even when they're doing all the right things?
Oh, that's an interesting question to be put that way. I think that energetic blocks are really about, once again, where your attention goes, your energy flows. And I think that people get into autopilot and they think that they've taken care of certain things when they really haven't addressed it. So let's just kind of go back to the employee model where somebody gets a job, they go to work, they sign on at the HR director's desk, they sign a piece of paper that says, they're going to put their 401k in this and maybe they're going to match it. And out of sight, out of mind. Well, I'm taking care of that. But the problem with that, I mean, as we're speaking, we're in the middle of this very big upheaval right now in our economic reality. The stock market's been going up and down wildly, and people are really now starting to pay attention to something that they might not have been paying attention to 2 weeks ago, a month ago. To my point, I think the block there is, do you pay attention to something when you don't have to? And that is down the line in the future. Right now, I think the biggest advantage for somebody who is in their young years is, excuse me, you have time. The time value of money is what the energy of money can really do for you. But once again, it's where do you want to go? And putting your attention there long enough that you can actually make some decisions and take some actions. So in terms of the block part, I think the block is that we often self-sabotage by not paying attention to what we really need to be paying attention to.
Such a good point. I have to say, though, one thing that I've been enjoying is just being on social media, everybody's memes and jokes, whether you're in crypto and you've lost money, or you're in the stock market and it's up and people are excited, or you're making jokes because you went from being a millionaire to now having $10 in the bank. And for me, I think what it makes me feel is more of the lightness around it all and how we're all trying to win. We're all losing at times. And it feels much more connected. So even it kind of makes me feel like, oh, I want to try, and it's not such a big deal. And it's kind of also taken a little bit of the pressure off of money, because I realized even when I was playing in the market, when it was up, I was just like, life is good. Like, there's a little smile, there's a little kick in my walk. But then when it was down, I really felt a sense of loss. And sometimes I'd have to reflect and just be like, they're just numbers, right? I mean, just numbers. But I was like, why are you letting them influence so much of how I feel, or how it's tied to my worth, or any of that? I was just
okay. Well, let's talk about that. So I think that that's really interesting, because from the perspective of what one can manifest in their life, okay, which is really what you're talking about. Did I just manifest $1 million or did I just lose $1 million?
Right.
But the truth of the matter is that the thing that you have to start with is your own emotions. How can you manage your own emotions and how can you manage yourself so that outside influences are not the determiner of how you feel?
Right.
Not a lot easier said than done. But when you start looking at that and then you start breaking that down, well, one of the reasons I can feel good today is I know that I helped people protect their money. When my clients call me and I see their number on my phone, I'm not saying, oh, I don't want to answer that call. I'm excited to talk to them because I know that what we did together has really helped them. So one of the things that energetically that I'm very interested in doing for people is creating understanding of what they've done with their money. So if the goal was, I want to protect my money and I want to make sure that I have enough when I retire in 10 years, then I can help them do that. But if we're not having that conversation, then outside influences are going to come in and affect us.
Right.
About that, we also have been told falsely by the financial services institutions that in order to make a lot of money, you have to take big swings and big risks. Right. And then if you put your money in safe places, you're not going to make as much money and you might miss out.
Right. You do have that.
So this whole FOMO idea around money is very real for people. So because they don't educate themselves and understand that there are many ways to approach solving this problem, that they could educate themselves and they could actually learn more about how to reconcile those two things and feel good about whatever decision they make. Back to that outside influence being the real source of how you feel versus actually taking personal responsibility and going, I want to figure this out. Because most people are financially illiterate, and it's not just this country, it's a worldwide reality. People just don't know where to go.
Right. I remember feeling with crypto where it's such a thing where you're like, it's going up, right? And you're like, woo, and you're like, should I sell? Because it feels good that it's up. But again, the FOMO, I'm like, well, what if I sell and then it's still going up? And that's what would happen too. I'd be like, okay, sell. And I'd be like, say, happy with that number. But then if it kept going up, then I would be upset because I didn't see the win. I saw the loss. And then if you tried to jump back in, which again is the worst thing you could do, because that's where they get you every time. You're like, fuck, I'm going to jump back in. Like I'm missing out. It's still
interesting because you can't time anything from the outside.
Right. And then you feel bad because you jump in and now it goes down and you're at a loss. And I felt like emotionally, it was the most unstable feeling ever. And I realized I was never happy. It was always like, I'm going to sell and it keeps going up and I'm in pain. I didn't sell, it went down, I'm in pain. You know, it's like this little ledge.
That would be the thing that we would look at right there.
You're constantly.
What makes you feel good when you make a money decision? What makes you feel bad when you make a money decision? And let's try to mitigate those things so that we can find the right solution for you.
Now, do you take away the emotion to it and try to get very impersonal when it comes to money? Like, just see it as numbers. Like, don't make the emotional scale so connected to what that number is. Like, do you dismantle that, or do you want some of that in there?
I think that it goes back to so it goes back to education. You have to understand, first of all, yourself and what you have a tolerance for. And then secondly, you have to understand choices. And here's the way that it works. So say that I go to grad school and I get an MBA and I want to go into the finance world. And I go out into the world and I get hired by a big firm for financial advising. Here's the marketing plan for that person. And this is the way it works in our industry. If that's going to be your path, then what you're going to do is you're going to go out and find the 100 families that have a net worth of $5 million or more. Okay. And then you charge a fee and you're going to make a percentage of that net worth that you manage. All right. So that's one aspect of the industry. What that does is that cuts out everybody else because it's a very small number of people.
Right.
Now, what that means is that if I make $50,000 a year, but I still want to learn what to do with my money, I can't call Goldman Sachs and say, hey, could you advise me? I can't call a money manager and ask them to advise me. Their minimums are millions and millions of dollars.
Right.
So what has happened culturally is that the average person doesn't have access to understanding what the big picture looks like, so they can decide where to set themselves up. So what we do is we go from a very different perspective. We say, you deserve to be educated, and I have to educate you in order to work with you. Because if you don't understand what I'm saying, then basically we're going to be going like this. And I have had financial advisors that constantly talked over my head, and my ego allowed me to go, which basically allowed them to do what they were going to do with my money. So what happened for me is in 2000, I lost a huge amount of money in that down. And in 2008, I lost another huge amount of money. So those things are very motivating for me to help people, because if I had known then what I know now, that would have been a very different outcome. And it wasn't about becoming an MBA in finance. It wasn't about learning things people can't learn. It's about taking the time with people one-on-one, meeting them where they are, and then taking them to a better place. That's the way that I approach my work.
So one thing, Dominique, that I love about your work is I find that you're like a financial alchemist. Mm-hmm. And I feel as though you turn our old programs into gold, the abundance. So through your process, how do you do that? Like, how do you kind of unlock my old programs and transform that into the gold?
I love that so much. And it really is true. It is like alchemy when you can actually take somebody through a process, show them where they are right now, and then actually start to work with their mindset to help them understand. Now, I'm going to be completely transparent. It doesn't always work for everybody, because some people really do have a lot around money, and you can show them all day. So I love this saying that knowledge is caught, not taught. And when you think about the world that we live in now, like, we are constantly bombarded with all of the different frequencies of information, right? The internet is 24/7, and even more so. We're constantly multitasking. We're constantly being hit with all of this stuff.
Right.
So somebody has to be willing to actually stop and take in, what they're doing now, and then want to change. Mm-hmm. So the alchemy isn't me. The alchemy is the education.
Right.
And being able to direct somebody and inspire somebody to pay attention for themselves.
So if I came to see you, and again, let's just say I came from a poverty mindset, I would first do the work, like, what programs am I running that I need to get rid of, and whether I do it through breathing exercises, mantras, movement. I try to work at removing some of those programs so that then I leave space for me to connect, say, to that abundance. Like, what is that wealthy part of myself look like? What does that wealthy part of myself feel like? What is that wealthy part of myself doing? Once I kind of have that laid out, now when I talk to you,
I love that.
It gives me more space to be like, okay, Dominique, I see myself living on the beach, and I want to be a healer, working with gurus across the planet. How do I make that a lifestyle for myself where I can earn money doing what I love and being happy? So now from that perspective, I'm like, I think I'm ready to come see you, because the other stuff, you're so educated financially that, again, when I'm not in that open space, it's like bouncing off of me. And until I had that picture of what I looked like and what I felt like, did I have a little bit of room for a little bit of information?
It's one of the reasons that I'm really fascinated to have this conversation with you, because I think collaborating in that particular space is extremely important somehow. Maybe the short amount of time I have with somebody, I'm actually going to talk to them about their dream map. We're actually going to talk about dreams they have financially in the short, mid, and long term. But it's not that work. what you just described. So I love that so much. And as you know, being out in the world and talking to people and knowing people, not everybody's ready to go there. And the way that you described your dreams and your ability to project into the future of what you would want your life to look like. You and I both know that it doesn't change now until you're living in that energetic reality.
Right. I have to step into that vibration.
It's
have to
so
resonate.
important.
Have to resonate.
But, I have to tell you, I talk to people all over the United States every single day. Last night I was on the phone on Zoom with somebody in Alabama. I have a big team in Texas. I talked to somebody in Florida. I live in Los Angeles. There's a lot of different consciousness. There's a lot of different ability to tap into how you feel and how you present. So everybody's different. And my job is really to meet people where they are. If you and I are working together, I know that we can move through a lot quickly because you'll be able to come back to that place that you want to go to.
Right.
If I'm talking to somebody who's really struggling, maybe they've lost a whole bunch of money. Maybe they don't know what's going to happen. Maybe they wanted to retire next year and now they really don't think they can. I'm going to have a different conversation with that person based on where they are. But my job is to leave people better than I found them. I mean, honestly, that is my moment by moment goal with people is if I'm in a box, I always say this to my team, people are looking at me in a box. I'm some lady who says she lives in LA. Nobody knows, right? So my job isn't to connect in with all the intellectual things that I can say to somebody. My job is actually to meet somebody and to feel them and to actually make them feel like this is an authentic conversation. I'm really listening to you. Where would you like to go?
I love that about you because most of the time, like you said earlier, I feel like financial people are talking at you and trying to sell me on something.
Absolutely.
And then again, I get into that defensive where it's like that little kid where it's just like, oh, I know what to do with your money and I can help you and I can do that. And you're like, okay, I'm going to trust you with everything.
Yes.
And I think sometimes what also makes me feel bad about that is I didn't trust myself to do what I wanted to do with the money. And whether I won it or lost it, I'm like, you know what, though? That was your idea and somebody helped you and that was your decision. I think the worst is when we do believe in what someone else is telling us, like they are somehow this mighty power and you hand them over everything and they lose it.
Yes.
Because I feel like doubly you feel like a jerk inside.
And I have been there. I've been there twice in my life.
Right.
And I'd have to say that I didn't come into this business thinking, oh, I'm going to help millions of people. But now I think I'm going to help millions of people. And it's been a very heart opening for me, this business, because I came from a business background. I like getting things done. I'm a hard worker, all of those programs that I've been running all these years. And what I realize now is it's not about that. It's actually about how do you see somebody and how do you allow yourself to be seen so they can feel the reciprocity of that, so that they can actually trust that the things that they're being taught are going to apply to them and change their life.
So I have a great question for you. How do you, as a financial advisor, tap into that higher frequency, that higher self, that loving part of you, tap into that, see the person, see the client that you're dealing with, and know how to guide them? How does that kind of flow through you?
Such a good question. So I'm going to answer it in a way you might not be expecting. So the financial services piece, okay, there are things you can help people with. And what's really cool about that is you're running numbers and numbers don't lie. So you can't have a crystal ball into the future, but you can look at things in their performance in the past and help people anticipate, right?
Okay.
So that's the kind of it's spreadsheets, rules, check, check, check.
And do I have to know that side, or
No.
you do?
But here's the piece. I tell my team, look, that's 10% of what you do. 90% is getting a PhD in human nature. 90% is reading the room. 90% is what is this person's tolerance for too much information? Even making my hand gestures, you're like, do I have to know that?
Yeah.
That's not where I would go with you. Where I would go with you is back to that place where it's like, where do you want to be? This is how I see myself. This is where I'd like to be. Well, let's attach some financial information around that, and let's reverse engineer back and see what it takes to get you there.
See, for me, when you said that, just like that, that's fun. I'm like, oh, you actually want to take time to see my vision.
Correct.
You're respecting what I want, and we're building this the way I understand it. Whereas the other way, which again could work for somebody else.
Absolutely.
That, like, even when I think financial advisor, I'm like, meh, like nothing about it. That's not me. That's not my world. I will just trust in the universe to bring me the abundance.
Let me say that was my advice. That was my mindset around doing this. Right. I said no to this opportunity to my broker 3 times. On the 4th time, I said, I'll try. And I came into this thinking I came from creative industries, right? I want to be a creative. I want to create my reality. What I didn't realize was I was not creating my reality by not looking at this part. And so when I started to when the pieces started to fall into place for me with what this could actually be, which is creating and helping, I call it my most creative work in my life, because each person is an individual. There's no rubber stamp for, oh, we're going to do that, we're going to do this, and then out. It's always about relationship. It's always about building something with somebody for themselves. My job is to provide them with the building blocks and help them put it together so that it makes sense for them. And that's never the same.
I love that you say that for the financial industry, because it's the exact same way doing energy work on people. So when people are just like, well, I want to come in and have this done, what are you going to do for me? Or what are your steps? Yes. And I'm just like, well, I know a lot of different methods. Right. I have access to a lot of different energies, and each person is going to be totally different. And each time they come in is going to be totally different because they're in a different space. So I find it so unique where it's like, well, I kind of not sure, right? I'm not sure what kind of energy work we're going to do, because
let's talk about the order of operations. You're not going to take them all the way to the end. You have to start at the beginning.
Right.
And a lot of times the beginning is breaking it down and helping people understand, oh, I think like this, but if I want to go there, I have to learn to think like this. Mm-hmm. Or I have to act like this. So it's all about
connecting
A, B, C, D, E,
and
F,
empowering
G.
them in the whole process.
Yes.
Right. So that you're this beautiful guide for them. You're like their money guide, right? You're helping them do these steps. And then even when you're not there, it's almost like you're that little angel in the corner going.
That's pretty fun. That has been fun for me this week when I've had clients calling me or texting me about, thank you so much. Thank you for not putting me in a situation of taking me out of a situation that could have jeopardized my financial future and putting me into something that I can sleep at night.
Right.
So that is exactly where I'm trying to go with people. Mm-hmm. So I've got my end game.
Making you rich.
And also making you feel good.
Yeah, that's so important, right? Because again, most people leave you in the dark. Like you're calling the crypto buddies, right? Like, what's happening? And nobody knows, or something's going to happen, but you're still on the edge of the seat, and you still feel like it's gambling.
And I think that your work and my work is very similar in that if my outcome is to leave you better than I found you, which is obviously yours, then that means that I may or may not be able to do that for you if you're not in the place to receive it.
Correct.
Right? So you never can take it on like, oh, I'm going to fix this. You can only intend to do better for somebody.
Right.
So the alchemy is in that. The alchemy is in, can you actually make this better for somebody? Sometimes you can't. but it's really amazing how many times you can. And the thing is, you have to try. That's the part.
You have to try. And I love, though, getting the momentum going.
Really
right? I
big
love
deal.
the momentum, because even again, like when you're talking about it and you're speaking my language and it starts to make sense,
Yeah.
I automatically feel wealthier.
Empowered.
I feel empowered.
Yeah.
I feel smarter about money. I feel like I want to take chances. I feel like I don't feel so scared. Like I'm in the dark and it's just like you're peeking around, you know, who can help me?
I have an alchemy story to tell you that is not my story, but I heard it yesterday from a woman that I don't know. She came to me through one of my business partners, and we were talking about her money. And she's in a very good financial place. But the alchemy of the situation is this. She was raised by alcoholic drug addicts, okay? But she and her brother chose to go to alchemize that situation into a completely different reality.
Oh, beautiful.
And in speaking to her, because I was fascinated, I'm like, okay, so tell me a little bit about how that happened and how that happened and how they ended up with multiple 7-figure net worths, each of them, through this very different upbringing. And she said, I just decided that I wanted to be this person. And I honestly think that that's the story. I think that, you know, it didn't happen overnight. And the consistency of that decision led her to that outcome.
Yeah.
And I really think that that's what it's about. You can have all this chaos over here and influences that really are not positive, and you can choose to alchemize that situation into something completely different. But it's the choice.
That's amazing. That's such good information. Thank you so much, Dominique, for being here with us today.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, you're a gem.
Thank you.
Until next time, you guys, keep tapping in.
If you want more, please join our community at marisagrieco.com.